Hi, this is Elise, and welcome to the Fabulously Spiritual Podcast. I'm here to inspire, awaken, share some stories, share some new perspectives with you, talk some truth, and help others on their own spiritual journey. This is my conversation with Amy Edwards. She's a fearless, fabulous, ageless woman. She's a musician, an author, loves herself. And I hope this conversation inspires you just to love yourself a little bit more. Enjoy.
Awesome.
Okay, I have Amy Edwards here today, and welcome, Amy. Thank you for being
Elise.
here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to connect with you and your beautiful spirit and all that you do.
Thank you. And I have her on here because honestly, I'm so inspired when I watch her stories. I think she is incredibly fearless. And the fact that I feel like that your voice is a gift, and many people do not understand their weapon of their voice. And I think that your look at ageism is also so incredible that you can kind of step in and do things at any age. And I kind of want to hear, for anyone that doesn't know you, what is your story? What can you share with us that kind of led you to kind of who you are today a little bit?
When you get to be over 50, you suddenly are like, my story's long, and so you're like, where do I begin?
Yeah.
But, it took me until my 40s to really grasp how my story fit together. I didn't understand what was continuity about it, what made sense. It wasn't until I was about 46 or 47 that the puzzle pieces of my life started to make sense. And when you say voice, that's such a common thread that became what my story centered around. And I didn't see it for a long time. And so I want to just tell people, when you feel like your story is disjointed, when you feel like maybe it doesn't make sense, you've said yes to this, you've said yes to this, you're here, you're there, you took this other job. It's okay, because maybe it's going to make sense someday. And have some faith in that. And I didn't know it was ever going to make sense. And now, in hindsight, I say, oh, there's a reason I said yes to these things. There's a reason that in my late 30s, I was already a mother of two, that some friends came to me and said, we're starting a band. We want to learn instruments. And these were all women in their late 30s, early 40s. And they said, will you join us? And they had already kind of started. And I said, okay. And I pushed, it was outside my comfort zone, but I pushed myself, picked up the guitar, started playing guitar, and that band ended up falling apart. But I had already been doing that for 3 years. So I thought, well, this pushes me and I am okay at it. So let's keep learning. And so I ended up writing my first songs at 40, releasing my first album, and into my 40s, performing here in Austin. I played electric guitar too, and being an independent rock and roll artist. And, I'm in a city of live music here in Austin, Texas. And the stretch of something I'd seen for so long, and then being accepted by this community and making friends of people that I'd admired for years and looked up to because I love music. It was so incredibly expansive. And it also pushed me in a way to use my voice in a whole different way, get more honest. And it also made me say yes to things that scared the shit out of me, like singing on stage, because that does not come naturally to me. I don't do it much Sorry?
Were you a singer growing up?
No, my sister was. And I was in choir in high school, but I never sang by myself. And the first few times I did it with the band, I played guitar and then they asked me to sing. And the first few times I did, I had kind of a nervous breakdown. And it took me a lot of lessons and a lot of mental shifts to get to a place where I was okay with my own voice. And so now it's fine with me, but I still, have to get over some mental blocks every now and then. But you push yourself. And that's been such a crucial part of my story, because there I was in my 40s realizing, what am I showing my daughters? How am I living my life that guides them into believing that they can do anything at any age? And they see it. whether they act like they do or not. They're now almost 19 and 15. And so that was an imperative part of what I did. But
Mhm.
also, it was pushing myself and truly believing that we can do anything at any age. And so
Mhm.
that's a big part of that approach to agelessness
Yeah.
that is so important to me and such a big part of my story that I hope can inspire others, because so many times we have these things we dream of and then we act like that ship has sailed or the time has passed, when those are just stories that we're telling ourselves. And
Mhm.
how can we let those stories, recognize them as stories first, then let them go?
Mm.
And as my 40s progressed, I started to understand that radio that I had done for 30 years off and on, voice work, I do freelance commercial work,
Okay.
and podcasting, which is
Mhm.
my big love,
Mhm.
because I get to philosophize, which and I majored in philosophy and religion in college, and so I get to, you know, just enjoy talking to people,
Mhm.
and it fits the radio thing in, and it's using my voice. And so all these things, suddenly I was able to look at them and go, oh, even I owned a clothing store in my 30s, late 20s and 30s, and I was like, oh, that was another way of using my voice. That was self-expression, and I was able to see things
Mhm.
in just a different context, and they
Yeah.
started to make sense. So that's some of my story. And then the realization in my late 40s was
Mm.
a whole nother thing.
What do you follow astrology at all?
Some. I just
W
had a incredible psychedelic astrologer, Nicole Darren, who you should have on. She's amazing. Had a really great conversation with her. And so I don't know enough about it to speak
Mm.
really well, but I do enjoy learning. And I do have a deep belief that we are affected by all these things that
Mhm.
surround us.
What is your sign?
I am a Virgo sun, a Pisces moon, and a Libra rising.
Oh, okay. 'Cause it's
How about
funny,
you?
I'm a Capricorn, sun, and I'm a Taurus rising and a Gemini moon. But,
Ah,
my astrologer friend told me that Taurus are supposed to use their voice, so I was curious. I'm like, "Oh, I wonder if you're a"
that's what my
um
fiance is. He
Oh,
is.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe I'm a lesson for him.
Yeah.
Entirely possible. Yeah. Yeah. And it didn't, I went, when I released my most recent album was in 2018. I released a double album called Magic.
Mhm,
And that year I was going through a divorce, my second divorce. And it was such a difficult time for me. And I
mhm,
ended up losing my voice. I got sick midway through the year and lost my voice. I couldn't sing. I could barely talk. It
mm,
was so depressing and frustrating for me. And I had to learn how much I valued it. And that was
mm,
part of when this all came together for me. I started also having some psychedelic experiences that came my way, and I said yes to them, even though they
mm,
scared me. And
mhm,
that also expanded me and helped me have more perspective on what I was doing in my life and what was really important to me. And I
mhm,
realized that this tool of voice was such a powerful modality for us. And I had to speak my truth more clearly
mhm.
in order to physically get it back, which was a trick.
Yeah.
Sounds like that should be backwards, but it was a huge lesson for me in speaking my truth and loving myself. And it was
Mm,
all fit together in this kind of perfect storm of experiences. And I had to I had to date again. I had to love myself and really learn how, which I'd never done, and
mm,
validate myself and have a whole new me and awakening. And I think that we think that too, we could think that that ship has sailed sometimes, like it's too
mm,
late to become fabulously spiritual. It's
mhm.
too, like, why didn't I learn this? And you could beat yourself up. Why didn't I learn this earlier? And you got to
Yeah.
let all that go and just say,
Mm,
nah, it's okay. I'm on my own timeline. Life's not
yeah.
a race.
Divine timing,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's
Mhm,
all about that divine timing. Things happen when they're supposed to. You and I were supposed to have this conversation right now.
mhm,
And I am constantly in a process of surrendering to that divine timing and surrendering
Yeah.
to not beating myself up for things. And that's another way of using my voice, right?
Mhm.
Not using it to bring myself down, but recognizing when I maybe tend toward things that aren't in my highest best interest,
Mhm.
and recognizing it, being kind to myself and saying, yeah, those are those old patterns. That's all right. You're still
Yeah.
relearning. So, I'm
Mhm.
constantly talking to myself in a better
Yeah.
way if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we all need to get into those practices and stop being constantly hard on ourselves every day for our imperfections and all the things
Yeah.
that we have, right?
Or being hard on yourself because you're being hard on yourself, like,
Yeah.
oh, damn it. Like, I shouldn't do that. Oh, relax. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of a constant consciousness. And then
Yeah.
that moves us into this process of like building the habit, exercising the
Mhm.
muscle, and also saying like, oh yeah, oh you've been doing that for so long, that's
Mm.
all you've known. It's cool. Those are just gonna slowly melt away, and we'll just keep building these new habits. Like that's the positive way
Mm.
of getting to that place rather than, I tend toward perfectionism, people
Yeah.
pleasing, all these things that I've had to mentally like
Mhm.
extract or unlearn. And so I've learned to just go a lot easier on myself. And that just feels so much better all
Yeah.
the way around. Don't you find?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a lot of un like you said, unlearning so I can kind of be more gentle to myself because I never was. I was always hard on
Yeah.
myself. Even with my spiritual practices that I had, I was so rigid and so disciplined within them that I was kind of missing the point for a really long time. You know? It
I can absolutely relate to that,
Yeah.
100%. I'm a list maker like
Yeah.
crazy. I love a good list. I love crossing things off, and then I would beat myself up if I didn't get
Mhm.
everything done.
Exactly.
And that I don't do that anymore, but I think that was a part of the learning. And
Mhm.
so if you can maybe just like advance a little bit into seeing it from that perspective,
Mhm.
or if anyone listening, can maybe take that to heart and say, okay, how can I like loosen up and just understand that this
Yeah.
is all part of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so hard. You know?
It is. It's not
Mhm.
easy and it doesn't happen overnight. So,
Yeah.
but that's the trick, is understanding that it's not easy. And then you go
Mhm.
like, "Oh, wait, it is easy to understand it's not that easy." And then you go easy on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, when do you feel like your divorce kind of triggered an awakening within you and kind of started like this new process of kind of finding yourself again and getting to your voice, and what kind of like was your story with that? Like how did that kind of transpire?
I've had 2 divorces. One when I was 33 or 34, and then one when I was 46 and 47. It took 2 years. It took a long time. And as they do sometimes.
Mhm.
And they both were catalysts for growth and change.
Mhm.
Anytime we have a big change like that, anytime I left both marriages,
Mhm.
and anytime we do something like that, you have a choice. Are you going to learn from it? Are you going to let it define you? Are you going to grow,
Mhm.
essentially? And that's my choice, is always growth.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I stepped into, what do I need to learn? How can I take more responsibility here?
Mhm.
Not blame, continue to take the high road. So there was a lot in there, because sometimes that life experience can make things so challenging. There's a
Mhm.
quote I love from Elizabeth Gilbert in Eat, Pray, Love. And she says, I think she says, there's a saying, you don't really know someone until you marry them. And she
Mhm.
says, I think you really don't know someone until you divorce them.
Mhm.
And so you can see someone else in a whole different light. And so it's a learning process of, am I really going to be who I say I am?
Yeah.
And that is, and then you get blamed from the other side. You get
Mhm.
told you're a bad mother or whatever it
Yeah.
is. And are you going to choose to believe that? Are you going to let those things bring you down, or are you going to define that for yourself? And for me, there's that internal voice that I had to learn to use.
Mm.
And I really had to put I Am a Great Mom on repeat in my
Mm,
head for both. The first divorce, I had a 1.5-year-old, 2-year-old.
mm, yeah.
And, but I knew things weren't right in that
Mhm,
relationship, and at least not for me. And so
mhm.
I had to put that on in my head, even if you're not being told that. Society can tell you that, like, you're supposed to stay together for your kids or whatever.
Yeah.
And my kids even say that sometimes. They're like, "You did this. I have to go back and forth to this house, and it's a pain in the ass for me. I got to pack up all my stuff, mom." And
Mhm,
I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." And I just have to lean back into my own self-talk that
mhm.
is an affirmation, essentially. And there's times I don't believe it,
Yeah.
but I still know in my heart that I am a good mother, and I just have to have that on repeat. So that's been a huge one for me as a
Mm,
parent. But growth wise, they both were massive. And this last one coincided with a lot of self discovery for me in my late 40s. And that
mm,
included even starting to date again, because
mhm.
I'd gone from one marriage to the other. So I hadn't dated since I was like 22.
Yeah.
And I realized I had 24 years of not dating. And so I had to readjust how I approached dating, which was a trip. And
Mm,
I had to make sure it was fun, because there's so many people that say, "Oh, dating sucks.
yeah.
all the things that people say about dating." And I chose again not to
Mm,
subscribe to those things, and instead to say, if I'm going to complain about it, I'm not going to do it. So
mhm,
how can I enjoy this? How can I really feel good and
mhm,
love myself and detach and not attach too quickly to the people that I'm dating? And that was a massive learning process.
mhm,
And so there were so many learning processes or things I learned in that divorce that I don't even know how to list them all, but those are some that leap to mind. So,
mm.
yeah.
And then what about the plant medicine journey? Did you start that right after your divorce too? Did that kind of
I started that
okay.
during the divorce. In
Mhm,
2018 was when that started. I got sick, and so I was dealing with having lost my voice and this darkness, because my
mm,
divorce got really dark for a while,
yeah.
and like dark, and I
Mm,
was depressed, and I didn't feel hopeful. And some friends that I really trust, these two beautiful women,
mm,
are medicine practitioners, and they offered me 5-MeO-DMT, which is also
okay.
called Bufo. I don't know if you've done
Is
that.
that the
Have you done
toad or no?
the
Oh,
toad
okay.
medicine?
I've never
Yeah.
done it. How is that?
So that's what I started with.
Okay.
It's for me terrifying.
Oh, was it?
But yeah, but I get really terrified with any
Mhm.
psychedelic, and I'm like, this is it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be committed and lose my mind, and my kids will be taken from me. I gotta go all the way.
Yeah.
But I'm always fine. And
Mhm.
so I did it, and I did it with them. I really trusted them. And right after I did it, I was so proud of myself. And they said, "We don't think you went far enough. We think you need to do it again right now." And I was like, "Fuck." So I was like, "Okay." And so I did. And I completely trusted them.
Mm.
I went all the way.
Oh my
It is a
gosh.
full-on ego death, meaning
Yeah.
that you don't have any barrier to God
Mhm.
or spirit or whatever. And
Wow.
so I did it. I laid down. I saw myself die. I can feel it in my heart as we're talking
Yeah.
about this. Like, I can,
Wow.
oh, it was really something. I felt
Mhm.
myself die. It only lasts to about 15 or 20 minutes, by the way. If
Wow.
anyone's considering it, you can drive home afterward. It is a wild thing, but if
Oh
you
my
have
gosh.
kids, if you need something that's concise and
Yeah.
powerful, that is a good one for you. Just do it with someone you trust.
Yeah.
And so I I saw myself die, and all these triangles rose up out of my body, and I was just one with God. You're just
Mhm.
in it. And and I didn't know what it meant. It takes time
Yeah.
to integrate, and I gave
Yeah.
myself a few months afterward,
Mm.
and that was when I started to heal. I
Mhm.
had a surgical procedure for my sinuses and everything around that same time.
Mhm.
And then I started to heal. I thought it would happen right
Mm.
away, but it didn't, of
Yeah.
course. Takes integration, takes time. And
Mhm.
so 3 months went by, and that was in December, and then by March of 2019, I had a reactivation,
Okay.
and
What do you
flashback, they call it sometimes,
Oh,
a
oh, okay.
reactivation of the bufo,
Oh.
just standing in my kitchen. And suddenly I I felt a healing like take
Oh,
over
wow.
me. And suddenly I I became a vegan. I quit smoking.
Mm.
What else did I do? I stopped drinking coffee. I had
Wow.
all these things like happened at once, and I could smell the bufo. I could feel it, and I was
Oh
like,
my
"Whoa,
gosh.
weird." I know it was really powerful, and so I continued down the road of allowing things
Mhm.
that came into my field to. I allowed myself to say yes to them. So
Mhm.
whether it meant uh, medically, I don't know the word. It was ketamine treatments that are
Oh, yeah.
under medical supervision. I
Yes.
have a I met a wonderful woman here who has a clinic called
Mhm.
Illuma, and so I did those,
Mhm.
and I just said yes in the moment.
Yeah.
Like she offered me one because I wanted to interview her for the podcast, and so
Yeah.
I started saying yes to some things. I said yes to an intense mushroom experience and
Mm.
psilocybin, and so all these things really pushed me into
Yeah.
growth. And
Mhm.
now I've reached a point where I allowed enough integration to where I in 2022, yeah, 2022, I said yes to sobriety because that was
Mm.
outside my comfort zone. So I thought, okay,
Yeah.
what does life look like if I really integrate and I really just live life as a psychedelic
Mhm.
experience
Yeah.
and just really lean into my spiritual practices
Mhm.
and what's within me. And so I felt like the time was right for that. And that's what
Mm.
I've been doing now. I'll be 2 years completely sober with nothing in April. So,
Wow. Good for you. That's
yeah,
incredible.
that's a push. That's a push in
Yeah.
itself to me and
And and
terrifying in its own way.
and how do you feel, you know, completely sober? Is it easy to handle for you at this point now, obviously?
You know what it is? The
Yeah.
desire for alcohol was pretty deep in me because I was a heavy drinker for a long time.
Mm.
When I did drink, I
Yeah.
drank.
Yeah.
And I've been able to readjust my thinking around that and ask myself, like, why do you want it? Why do you even need it? And
Mhm.
my partner is sober, he's in recovery, and
Gotcha.
we talk a lot about that. And that has been very helpful. So it's
Mhm.
just been a bit of a process, but I do feel really good. I sleep great. I feel like my
Yeah.
skin's been good. And so will I drink again? Probably.
Mhm.
I had one glass of wine when we flew back from Egypt,
Mhm.
and I got kind of pressured into it actually by the flight
Yeah.
attendant. But I did, and you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
I still consider myself 2 years sober coming
Yeah.
up, and I'm really proud of that. And I just wanted to see what happens
Mhm.
when we do that. I treat these things as an experiment, and I think that
Yeah.
that's a great way to look at life anytime you're picking up a spiritual practice or trying a psychedelic or trying
Mhm.
sobriety or whatever it is, just try it as an experiment. It doesn't have to be forever.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because 'cause
Mhm.
I've been toying with sobriety for a very long time. You know, my it definitely, alcoholism runs very deep within my family. And it's something that I've always, I wouldn't say like, when I was a teenager, I obviously had probably problems, but, I would
I
s
hear you.
yeah. I would say that it's just always been a thing. I don't know how else to say it. And my spiritual practice pushed me out of it, but I've always found that, um, it's the one thing that I always am trying to cut out of my life. And not that I'm drinking every night because I'm not, but I had to really change my relationship and how I viewed it because I had such a negative, um, connection with it from growing up. And, you know, I don't think I would ever call myself sober because even if I'm not drinking, it's not like I would never do it again. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but I'm always interested in people that actually maintain for a really long time. You know, I could go a month or two and not have anything, but then well, yeah, have a drink. My husband's in the restaurant business, so it's kind of hard
Oh,
sometimes. Um,
yeah.
but I've learned through my spiritual journey is like stop being so judgmental. You know, it's okay. You don't have to be perfect all the time. Your energy doesn't have to be up here all the time. You know, so it's
It's not gonna
interesting.
be, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna
Hmm.
be ever perfect all the time. It's not
Hmm.
always gonna be up here. And even when I'm not drinking for the last however long, I still have fluctuations. I've just noticed
Mhm.
that my mood is more even,
Yeah.
and that feels really good. I'm able
Mhm.
to recover my mood really quickly
Mhm.
when I'm down. And I say that, but I had a bout last year where I got pretty down. And
Mm.
so that surprised me, but I still feel like it was less than it would have been had I been drinking.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? I'm not saying I want to have drinks with friends every now and then.
Yeah.
And so I am going to hit this 2-year mark because that's been my goal.
Mhm.
And then I probably will.
Yeah.
I just am I think it made me more relaxed around it.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to beat like we were talking about beating yourself up. Like I don't
Mhm.
need to beat myself up for having a
Mhm.
glass of dessert wine on a flight,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And I don't need to beat myself up if I do have a drink with a friend down the road or
Mhm.
whatever. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. It's all just okay. It's
Yeah.
part of our process. It's part of our learning process.
Yeah. It's funny because,
Mhm.
like, I have been in quite a very spiritual practice for a long time. I shared with you, I have practiced Kundalini yoga for 16 years, which is a
Wow.
very kind of strict sort of practice. You're not supposed to mix things with it and all of that. But I've kind of been living in, one foot out because I'm like, I am still a human. Like, I'm not gonna like, I'm not a cult follower. I'm not like, I'm still gonna live my life. And I had to, thank God I was kind of like that, to be honest with you, because now the people that were like super strict are kind of like, um, after a lot of stuff happened in the practice with, teachers or whatever, Yogi
Yeah.
Bhajan, the leader, whatever, he fell from grace, let's
Yeah.
say. And I'm happy that I kind of lived in with both feet in both worlds. You know what I mean? Where I have always had the balance. So I kind of shift from both sides sometimes, which I think is fine and healthy, you know?
It is. It
Hmm.
absolutely is. And it's that strictness again, that
Yeah.
rigidity. And
Hmm.
I've been there too. And like says who?
Yeah.
Says who? We're adhering to someone else's idea of what's
Exactly.
right or
Hmm.
wrong. And personally, I am letting go of doing it right, doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Like everything is on a grand
Hmm.
spectrum.
Hmm.
And so if it's all God, then
Yeah.
why are we so wrapped up in labeling it these
Yeah.
ways? And how can I let go of more judgments toward
Mhm.
others and towards myself? That's a really great lesson because if people are practicing Kundalini yoga and then
Yeah.
they're judging you for doing it wrong, are they really practicing
Yeah.
Kundalini yoga?
Yeah.
Are you really living in a space of
Mhm.
true letting go and detachment when you're judging others?
Yeah.
And so those I come back to that little
Mhm.
lesson right there of constantly saying like, "Oh, how am I judging myself and how am I judging others and how can I let go of that
Mhm.
in this moment?" And that's this ego, right?
Yeah.
That's this ego that we can constantly surrender to letting go of.
Mhm.
And it's a massive lesson, and that's that thing, right? And
Mhm.
then you're like, "Oh god, do I judge this kundalini teacher that had a fall from
Yeah.
grace, that did things I don't agree with?" And
Yeah.
then how do I navigate that? What's right, what's
Yeah.
wrong? And you know what? You got to live by your own values.
Mhm.
And if you are committed to not being judged and not judging people, then are you going to
Mhm.
really live that, right?
Yeah.
It invites all that in, and it can get kind of weird
Yeah, I know.
sometimes.
There's a lot.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, there
Mhm.
is, but that's good. That's part of
Yeah.
the beauty of this human experience that we've
Mhm.
been handed. And it sounds like, with your Kundalini practice, you were able to stay in that human experience a little bit
Mhm.
more,
Yeah.
which is beautiful because it's valuing this hand we've been dealt.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
it's funny because I recently have been sharing stuff because 'cause I've been seeing so many people, talk about, like, their awakening journeys and kind of what's happening to them. And,
Mhm.
this is probably what you experienced when you did the, ibogaine is, like, the ego death. Uh,
Oh, I didn't do
oh,
ibogaine. I didn't do ibogaine.
not
Yeah.
not ibogaine. I
Uh,
mean,
Bufo.
bufo.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
ibogaine's one I don't think I'm ever gonna
Okay.
do, but yeah.
Um,
Mm-mm.
well, similar, that
Yes,
you
yes.
you had that experience of, the ego death, and it's a scary, it's scary when you feel that. It's like, I mean, when you kind of go through an awakening process and like the Kundalini yoga does that to you, and but it does it to you sober, and it elongates the process. So you feel all of those things dying, almost around you. Like walking to bring your kids to school, and it's painful for a lot of people. That's why some people say they go crazy. It's not that you go crazy, it's that you're feeling the separation happen. And the thing that I've noticed is now that I'm kind of going through it again in my life, and I've gone through many journeys of it, but like I said, I'm never like all the way up here all the time. Life happens, and I have little kids and I have babies, and I stopped practicing, and then like now I'm feeling like I want to go a little deeper. So I'm feeling it happen again, and I'm seeing the things again that I once, it brings up all your junk, brings up all your shit. So you have to feel it, and it's scary. And what happens is you want to run. And
Mhm.
I was talking to someone the other day, and it's like, this is like the hippie culture of like where people like want to run away, and everyone wants to have a commune and go live in Costa Rica and go live like, wherever in the woods, one with nature. And the whole point of it is that, that's great. That's for some people. But, when you go through the awakening processes, you need to anchor your light here. Like you need to learn how to be an anchor right here. And like for you, you or me or whoever having this experience is, how can we like physically feel and be in this experience right here so we can anchor the light for others and like be the vessel to feel things that are going on, you know?
Totally. I resonate with all that,
Mhm.
and so like that old saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Mhm.
So your shit's gonna still be with you,
Yeah.
and so I I subscribe to that really hard because if you're seeking a
Yeah.
journey and you're seeking all these things, then you're telling yourself, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Like the underlying message is I need something outside myself.
Mhm.
And so how can we really get into this right here, right now? You're
Yeah.
having an experience right now, so don't discount that. So, what can I learn from it? How
Mhm.
can I let go right now? How can I step into who I really want to be and what I'm really learning right
Yeah.
now? And I think there's some meme I saw not too long ago. You've probably seen it, and it was if you think you're spiritually enlightened, go spend a week with your family,
Mhm.
right? And so it's these moments of really realness. And so that's when things come into play. And you have to check in.
Mhm.
Am I really living this all the time?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I meant about the judgment too.
Mhm.
One day, a few years ago, I used to do these Instagram live meditations every
Mhm.
Wednesday morning. And I was doing one and I would, try to look my best and wear
Mhm.
something cute and
Mhm.
whatever and be all like,
Mhm.
let's tap in and meditate. And I really enjoyed doing it. But one day, my dog, I didn't put my dog away
Yeah.
and she was click clacking her claws around
Mhm.
and she was just being just kind of all over the place.
Mhm.
And it was really irritating me. And so I finished my meditation. I, stayed with it and all that and, tuned her out. And then as I wrapped up, I stopped the meditation and then I got so mad at her. I was like, "What are you doing?" And I was so mad at her. And then I had this moment where I thought, is my Instagram live still on?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh fuck. And so I go back and I check and it was off, but I was like,
Yeah.
what if it hadn't been?
Mhm.
What would people have seen? What would people have thought? Am I really living it? Like that was very misaligned. And so
Yeah.
it's these little bitty lessons. Like we think
Mhm.
it's these grand trips to fucking, where Costa Rica to
Mhm.
do your ayahuasca journey. You know
Yeah.
what? It's not. It's little things all the time. And
Exactly.
those are the practices that you can get into all the time.
Mhm.
How are you with your kids when you're driving home?
Mhm.
Are you getting lessons? Like all the time. And I get them all the time. So that was just a little one with my dog. And it was a moment of, oh shit, I'm not being this,
Mhm.
enlightened babe
Yeah.
that I am putting forth. How can I be more like that? And so
Mhm.
I caught myself, I apologized to my dog, apologized to myself, and I was just like, okay, I can do better.
Mhm.
And that really stayed with me. And I even shared it on
Mhm.
social media and I talked about it because I was like, these are the little things that we're learning all the time because,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's plenty of people that are traveling to their medicine journey, wherever it is,
Yeah.
and then being, however, in traffic or
Yeah.
getting annoyed with people in the airport.
Mhm.
And that those are the moments that we can let go of our ego and surrender to the moment. And I'm not saying you have to love, well, I am kind of saying you love it all,
Well,
even
yeah,
when
you gotta
you're
be
not.
authentic.
Yeah.
It's human,
Yeah.
right?
But you step outside of
Yeah.
yourself enough to even love the annoyance,
Mhm.
even love the
Yeah.
click clack of your dog's feet
Yeah.
when she's, and you're just like, oh yeah, this is part of my human experience.
Mhm.
And and to me, that's the path to spiritual
Yeah.
enlightenment. It's those constant
Mhm.
t- constant lessons and recognizing them and getting in the habit of being conscious to where you're like, oh, here's another one.
Yeah.
Good one. And so you just keep learning, and that's been so much fun, even when it's hard,
Mhm.
to have enough detachment to be able to see those lessons all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm sure I'll have 10 more today.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. What do you do for your practices? What are kind of like your daily rituals that you like to do that kind of get you aligned and aware, so for me I have to like
Yeah.
wake
Well,
everything up sometimes.
yeah. Yeah. I used to be rigid, as we were talking about. I used to have a list of things that I had to do, but I'm more in a space of living it
Yeah.
and being present. And I feel like that rigidity was good for me.
Yep.
It got me into a space of building those muscles and those habits to where I'm more able to tune into that all the time. Now, that's
Yeah.
not saying I'm perfect at it, but it's a learning process. And so my practices have shifted a bit.
Yeah.
And so I do try to read in the mornings.
Mm.
Let's say more often than not, right? I read in the mornings. Right now, I usually have several books going. I'm reading A Miracle a Day, I think it's called, by
Mm.
Marianne Williamson. Courage to Change, which is an Al Anon book. I love Al
Oh, okay.
Anon. I am in my own Al Anon recovery.
Mm.
And I am also reading It's Not Your Money by Tosha Silver. Healthy as Fuck. Oh, I just finished that. Una Douglas, I think her name is. And so I just have like, and A Course in Miracles.
Okay.
That one's
Yeah.
a slog. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get through it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, and so I rotate a lot of books, but I try to read a few pages a day at
Mm.
least. And I meditate when I can. I have a regular Hape practice and I enjoy doing that. But I've kind of let Hape go a little bit too. And I've enjoyed your Kundalini
Thank you.
uh, app.
Mhm.
Really, so much admiration for you and what you've built
Thank you.
and what you're putting out there for people. Thank you for sharing that with me
Mhm.
because I've really enjoyed it. And it's taught me a lot. But I'm not rigid on
Mm.
all these
Yeah.
things and anymore. But the things I am rigid on are when I fall asleep,
Mm.
I practice self-love in my mind.
Mm.
I tell myself, I love myself, life loves me. I get those on
Yeah.
rotation because I'm a recovering ruminator.
Mm.
And so, how can I make my ruminations serve me? And when I wake up in the morning, rather than list off specific things I'm grateful for, which I've kept a gratitude journal for
Yeah.
years and I would write down things, but I haven't been doing that much lately
Mhm.
because I have moved my gratitude practice into something more fundamental.
Mhm.
And what that means, and I've been meaning to share about this, so I'm
Yeah.
glad we're talking about it. What that means is I think of something I'm grateful for,
Mhm.
and then I just feel that feeling.
Yeah.
And rather than focusing on specific things,
Mhm.
I just sit in
Get
that
in the
feeling,
frequency.
get in the frequency.
Mhm.
That's right. And so that has been really beautiful. And so when I feel grateful for something, I just
Mhm.
use it. And then sometimes I'll apply it to things that are hard.
Yeah.
And so, or that I maybe don't feel inclined to feel grateful for.
Mhm.
And so I try to apply that in so many different
Yeah.
ways. Like, oh, this uncertain journey of
Yeah.
my career or whatever
Yeah.
it is. And
You try to
or the
alchemize it.
thing, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Mhm.
like that. I
Mhm.
like that word a lot.
Yeah.
So I do. So it's more that feeling. So every morning when I wake up and and I've been kind of surprised that this has become such a deep habit
Mhm.
because I do it right off the bat when I open my eyes in the morning. I just still lay there with my eyes closed and I just get in that frequency.
Mhm.
and just the gratefulness, the feeling of my bed,
Yeah.
can trigger it so good because
Mhm.
I'm so grateful to be warm and cozy right there. And so how can I just start applying that and
Mhm.
really living in that frequency? And so that's been really epic for me. And
Yeah.
then I had gotten out of my exercise practices. And
Mhm.
so I've been working toward moving the energy in my body more. So
Yeah.
that's been one. But I think that, yeah, it's more living these
Yeah.
practices rather than viewing them as little one-offs that I
Doing all the
do.
time, being instead
Yeah.
of doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've been right there with you. It's like instead of going through the motions so much, sometimes you need to do it to kinda get that frequency in, to, like,
Yeah.
remember, "Oh, yeah, this is what it feels like again." And
Mhm.
then you just have to learn how to, like, carry it on throughout your day. And it
Well said.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think you get to a point after doing it so much and you're like,
Mhm.
okay, this doesn't need to just live here,
Yeah.
right? On my mat or on my meditation cushion.
Exactly.
How can I expand that? And
Mhm.
that's part of that loosening up too,
Mhm.
is like, oh, cool. I can live like this. And then I'm in a way more joyful, balanced,
Yeah.
expressive,
Mhm.
beautiful state,
Mhm.
and working from love
Yeah.
rather than like having these fear
Yeah.
spaces too.
Exactly.
So mhm.
It's funny because I was in that space recently that I felt like I just had, like, the to-do list thing. I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so busy, like, every day." And you forget, you lose the heart frequency, you lose the joy of why you're actually doing the things that you
Yeah.
were doing in the first place, even though I'm teaching spirituality. It's like, "Where am I?"
Yes.
You know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And, that's just a big part of the learning
Yeah.
process, and so we
Mhm.
do. And now, I'm practicing different things and I'm excited about those. We got a sauna. And
Yeah.
so I am just saunaing all the time
Yeah.
and loving it. And I really enjoy that. It's different for
Do
me.
you do the
Having one in
blanket,
my house.
or do you do the one that you sit in? Which one do you have?
Oh, we have, believe it or not, this is insane, but we have 2 here at our
Oh,
house that
do
you
you?
sit in.
Ugh.
2, but one outside and one inside.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
we got a plunge sauna inside, so it's, like, right by my bedroom, and so I get in there all the time, and
Very
I
nice.
love it, and it
Mhm.
just feels good, and it feels like my energy's moving, and
Yeah.
that's been fun for
Mhm.
me, and so sometimes life just presents these other modalities.
Yeah.
So what can we learn? Where can I
Mhm.
expand some? Like some people don't want to sweat. I don't want to get in the cold plunge all the time. And
Yeah.
we have cold plunges. And my fiance is a Viking and he wants to do it all the time. And
Yeah.
he's like, get in this cold plunge. And I'm like, I'd rather sweat.
Yeah, yeah.
There's an invitation for me to expand there too. And
Mhm.
I take it up sometimes and I will do
Yeah.
it. But anyway, it's just the practices might shift and our learning
Yeah.
might shift, and that's fun,
Yeah.
I think.
Especially for
Mhm.
women, since we have our moon cycles, you know, some days I feel like this, some days I actually feel like that,
Yeah.
you know? It's like round and round and round.
Absolutely.
My husband's like, "Where are you
Absolutely.
today?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, you know what? What if we can view that as fun and interesting?
Mhm.
Like, oh wow, I get to experience being a woman. I get
Mhm.
to experience whatever this is.
Yeah.
And I say that's not to say I'm always like that,
Mhm.
but it's a coming back to that
Yeah.
and a remembering of that
Mhm.
and how quickly we can come back to that. And that's part of training ourselves with the rigidity that we might have had in the
Yeah.
past. Okay, I've trained myself. How quickly can I come back to
Mhm.
this? How quickly can I have a disagreement with my partner and he's annoying me? But then I come back to
Yeah.
the bigger picture. I come back to we're a team.
Yeah.
I come back to we are both committed to this and we love each other. And so
Yeah.
that's that's been
Mhm.
a good expansion for me as well.
Yeah, and using your partner as
Mhm.
a mirror, as the biggest, um, place for awakening is the place that I am with my husband now. We've been married for 10, almost 11 years, and
Wow.
yeah, thank you. And your relationship changes so much,
Yeah.
and we're at the place now that I'm at a place that I'm kind of going deeper, it's like, wow, I really need to start to reflect and use my mirror when I get annoyed,
Yeah.
and reflect it. Oh, it's actually me that was kind of maybe I'm not giving what I need to give to be reflected back, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, and Yeah, I don't always understand the mirror thing. Sometimes I feel confused by that.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's listening and they feel confused
Y
by that, you're not alone. I just sometimes, I mean, sometimes you feel legitimately like wronged
yeah.
or you feel like, and so I don't know. I do I do like to, though, reflect on my own responsibility in whatever situation arises,
Mhm.
and I do like to sit back into, am I being the person that I say I am and that I want to be?
Mhm.
And and those are the times when I'm like, okay, I know that I could step up and do the, a right thing. I don't
Yeah.
know if I want to say that. Do the thing that calls to me,
Mhm.
that is maybe difficult in that situation. It's like maybe instigate a
Mhm.
conversation and listen without
Yeah.
judgment, and those
Yeah.
kind of things. So
Mhm.
those are definitely learning experiences, and I feel like I've been, obviously in a couple of
Mhm.
marriages, and so now I, for the first time, feel so secure that we
Yeah.
are both really in this.
Yeah.
And that's not to say my ex-husband or husbands weren't, but something feels different this time. And I think it's my own level of
Yeah.
commitment. So it is a mirror for me. I
Mhm.
think that I think that that's accurate to say
Yeah.
now.
And the mirror piece, I feel like I didn't understand it for a long time as well, and it's just because of probably the space I am right now that I kind of been, um, reflecting again, and
Yeah.
what I realized is that, for example, so many times us women, we feel like, I'm not being paid attention to, or like women tend to, um, feel like our husbands have to do it all sometimes to
Hmm.
cater to our needs, and reflecting on the moments that I have felt like that, and I really had to sit and think, well, I'm not doing the same for him. And when
Yeah.
I project the energy that he needs, I will be reciprocated back. And that's how I've been using the mirror lately, of really tuning into, the places that I need to
Yeah.
reflect when I feel like unworthy or not loved or whatever.
Yeah. For me, it's been more of a
Mm.
paradox. And when I get very like, you're not doing this for me, or, you're not
Mhm.
giving me the attention that I want, that to me is my cue. And maybe this is a different way of mirror reflecting.
Mm.
But to me, it's a paradox of, ah, okay, that's me needing to lean back into my own practices.
Yeah.
Am I giving myself attention? Am
Mhm.
I giving myself the worthiness? Am I doing my mirror self-love
Mhm.
practice? Am I really feeling my own love?
Yeah.
And those are the times that I get it back in, like,
Yes.
abundance. It's when I give it to myself, and that
Mhm.
always trips me out. That's been a thing in Al-Anon and in recovery,
Mhm.
is this lesson of when we're wanting that and
Yeah.
clinging to it, instead of trying to fix it and giving more to your partner,
Mhm.
you lean into yourself.
Yeah.
And that's been a massive lesson for me, because I've tried to fix, and
Yeah.
then you can almost, if you're not careful,
Mhm.
then you get into, wait, I'm giving you so much. Why am I not getting it in return?
Yeah.
And that's a tough spot. And I have to
Mhm.
stay on guard for that,
Yes.
because I've tried to fix in relationships. And so instead, for me, it's a lesson to go, all right,
Mhm.
how can I give this to myself?
Yeah.
And the wildest thing happens, because every single time I do it,
Mhm.
he steps up,
Yeah.
and I go, holy shit. And I think, wow, how is that even possible? But
Mhm.
it's something about creating that energy
Yes.
into ourselves that draws it to you.
Mhm.
And you become a magnet for, it's that
Yes.
you
Yeah.
are, and then you draw it to you, which is such a paradox in my mind,
Mhm.
rather than I need to put this out
Mm.
in order to get
Yeah.
it back. And so that's been like the massive
Mhm.
shift for me. And everything is paradoxical in that way, where if I live it,
Mhm.
that's when I get it. And I
Yeah.
go, huh, who knew?
Yeah. And you're a thousand
Yeah.
percent right on that, because I do understand that as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, so let's see.
What else would you
Let
like to address
let's
today?
let's see. I want to talk about Okay, so actually, now that we're on mirroring and mirror work, and when I was watching something of yours the other day, I was triggered because I haven't done mirror work in a long time. Is that still
Triggered.
not triggered in a good way? Um, like remembering, oh yeah, I should probably do mirror work. I haven't done it in a long time.
You're talking about the actual mirror
Yeah,
looking at yourself and saying, I love you.
yeah.
A big practice for
Mm-hmm.
me. And that was one that I started when we were talking about like 2018, 2019. And I really forced myself because I had never done it.
Yeah.
And I did it in a lot of ways
Mm-hmm.
because I was single at the time. So I forced myself to have pleasure practice in front of the
Mm.
mirror. If
Wow.
nobody's done that before, that can be
Mm-hmm.
weirdly out of your
Yeah.
comfort zone, even though there's no one around. And both of my parents are passed
Yeah.
away. So you're kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know who's
Yeah.
watching, and turn away
Yeah.
everybody. And so really like really appreciating yourself, really loving yourself.
Mm.
There's a book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It
Mm.
by Kamal Ravikant, and it is excellent. And he does that. And so
Mm.
he says, set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and say I love you, sit in front of the mirror and say it for 5 minutes. And if 5 minutes is a stretch, do it for one.
Mm.
Work your way up or work your way down. I started with 5 minutes and now it's enough for me to invoke that feeling
Mm-hmm.
when I just stand in front of the mirror and I do some Reiki
Yeah.
mantras. I'm a Reiki master as
Yeah.
well. And so I do some Reiki mantras. So I try to do this quite often,
Mm.
several times a day. And you can, again, it's building that
Yeah.
muscle, building that
Yeah.
habit, and you look at yourself without the critical eye and
Mm-hmm.
instead with the loving eye, like you would to someone you really
Yeah.
love, which we don't give ourselves.
Yep.
And that's what it's about. And it's surprising how it can make you
Yeah.
cry. And you've probably experienced
Mm-hmm.
that. So, you know what, Bo, though, again, like don't beat yourself up,
Yeah.
right? Like you just, it was triggering because you're like,
Yeah. I
dang, I
love a good
recognize
cry.
that maybe I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
So,
Totally.
is your practice, is it more than I love you, or do you just say the words I love you on repeat? How does it look for you if you're going to teach
I
someone how to do it right
think
now?
I think when I've set the timer, I I start with just I love you.
Okay.
And I like to put my name in there
Mm.
too. And then I just flow with it.
Okay.
And so it varies and it's what you're feeling in the moment
Mm.
and what you sense you need and you look at that person in the mirror and
Yeah.
you think if this was my child,
Yeah.
if this was someone I really loved,
Mm-hmm.
what would I say to them?
Yeah.
And sometimes you look into your eyes and you
Mm-hmm.
see what you need and you just start to tell yourself you're doing great,
Mm-hmm.
I love you so much
Yeah.
and you're so special and whatever calls to your heart
Yeah.
in that moment, there's no wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been really beautiful. But I would say just starting with just the basis of love
Mm-hmm.
is a great place to be. And now when I do it more quickly, I like to draw a card. I have an angel deck
Mm-hmm.
and
Me too.
Tosha Silver has one called Divine Abundance. It's my favorite
Mm.
deck. And I keep that downstairs in front of a big mirror and I I draw from those and just
Mm-hmm.
tune into the moment. And I tell myself I love you for however long I feel it.
Mm.
And I say a modified Reiki mantra.
Mm.
And so that's what works for me
Yeah.
and what's just come about after years of
Yeah.
practice.
And
Yeah.
what's funny
Mm.
is that when I used to do it, I felt a lot of transformation from, almost more than like the hard breathing work that I used to do, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Um,
Wow, that's
yeah.
interesting.
I mean, the hard breathing work gives you a very physical, you know,
Yes.
visceral feeling. But this is kind of just that softness that I think that so many of us need to bring in that we forget about because we think that everything needs to be hard to.
Right. Or it
Mhm.
takes some sort of extraordinary
Yeah.
effort, or I have to be in the right place and
Mhm.
have quiet and do this. You don't.
Yeah.
And that's like those moments that we were talking about. And so, yeah, just you can literally do it in your car.
Yeah.
You can pull your rear view mirror down and see yourself and
Mhm.
really see yourself
Yeah.
and tell yourself those things that maybe you haven't ever told
Yeah.
yourself, but you so freely share it with
Yeah.
others, your child, your partner,
Mhm.
whoever, your friend,
Yeah.
you would support them and say the most uplifting things, and yet we have trouble saying it to ourselves. And so how can we more build that habit?
Mhm.
And that's been a huge process for me.
Yeah.
And it takes time, but it does pay
Mhm.
off. And then you start to just feel
Yeah,
shinier
exactly.
and people notice and you're like, wow,
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe this is
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
Maybe I should keep it up.
Do
Mhm.
you say it out loud? Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you said
Mhm.
that. Yes. Always,
Yeah.
always say it out loud.
Mhm.
Say it out loud. Say it out loud. It's hard
Yeah.
at first, but gosh, yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm a huge proponent of using our voice,
Mhm.
our external
Mhm.
voice, not
Yeah.
the little silent voice in your
Yeah.
head. Say it out loud because that has so much power. How many times do we say things out loud that are going in our own ears that are perhaps self deprecating?
Yes.
And how can you s- cut that shit out? I
Yeah.
am not a fan of self deprecating comments
Mhm.
whatsoever, not even like, oh, dumb me or oh
Yeah.
silly me or I'm always late or I'm always what stop
Yeah.
it. Stop it. And those I do take a hard
Mhm.
stance on those and I try to cut that
Yeah.
out completely and say the good stuff
Mhm.
and say it out loud because those are the ones that we hold back. And
Yeah.
so saying I love you out loud
Mhm.
is just powerful. And that's partly why I put my own name into it. I think
Mhm.
that that's a
Yeah.
great practice too. I kind of I kind of go back and forth with that, saying I love you, Amy.
Yeah.
I love myself. So
Mhm.
I kind of go back and forth with that.
Yeah. I love that. And
Yeah.
the people don't realize is the throat is the seed of manifestation. So this is where it starts is this, just speaking it out loud,
Mhm.
which is so powerful.
Yeah, this
Mhm.
powerful throat
Yeah.
chakra. And, you know, picture that if you want to.
Mhm.
Picture it golden, picture it blue,
Mhm.
whatever you want. Just, connect with it.
Yeah.
Connect with it. Know that you have so much power right there. And it's this what we're hearing. We hear our voice
Mhm.
more than we hear anyone else's voice or
Mhm.
more than anyone hears ours. And we forget that.
Mhm.
And so what are you really
Yeah,
saying? What are you really hearing?
exactly.
And how can we make that serve us better?
Mhm. And
Right?
then when you do it too, another layer is to, tune the frequency, if that makes sense to people. Because your voice carries frequency and there's so much that is within that frequency. Where does it really come from? Because like you said, you can say I love you a lot of times and not mean it, but when you say it with intention, with the heart, there's a different frequency that it carries out. And that goes into your body, into your cells, into everything.
I do agree with that. I also think that even if you're not tuned into the
Mhm.
frequency, there's a lot of power in saying it
Yeah.
when you don't even believe it and you aren't even in the frequency.
Yeah.
You can get yourself
Mhm.
there just by saying stuff, which is
Mhm.
wild to me too, right? So if
Yeah.
you just start saying it, I think that's why people are like affirmations don't work. Well,
Mhm. Yeah.
disagree. I disagree. I think that they really do, even when you don't believe
Mhm.
them necessarily. You can start saying it, and those are innate
Mhm.
truths that maybe you just aren't recognizing in this
Yeah.
moment, right?
Mm.
Like if you're used to saying, I always fuck things up,
Mhm.
right? Then how can you shift that into, I'm always learning?
Mhm.
There's one, right? I'm always learning. I'm always growing.
Yeah.
I'm always like there, you don't, maybe you just quit believing in mistakes or mess ups,
Mhm.
and you just say life is a learning process. This is exciting. What am I going to learn today? And those are simple shifts that maybe you don't necessarily believe, but you will in
Mhm.
time. And you'll start to live in that frequency
Yeah. After a while with
as it
practice.
progresses.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Uh-huh.
love that.
I love that. I love that.
So let me ask you, is there anything you wanna share before we finish?
Well, I thought of something that I wanted to ask
Sure.
you. It's hard for me to step out of
Oh, yeah.
podcaster role. And and I just thought I really love the title Fabulously
Thank you.
Spiritual. And I wondered why you called it that. You've probably spoken to that before, but
Yeah.
I was
Um,
curious.
I really called it that because I feel like that is the energy that I wanna put out, that spirituality is not crunchy granola, and I am not.
Ah, yeah.
And I through my own practice, I've, like I told you, I've lived in both worlds. So and that's why I talk about, grounding your energy here as a householder. And I think that, when you are connected to your spirituality and rooted in it, you feel fucking fabulous. I mean, like,
Yeah.
you feel amazing and authentic, and you're, connected, and I think that's kind of where most people wanna be and feel and live, and it just takes a little practice.
Oh,
Mhm,
yes. Yes, yes,
mhm,
yes. Snaps to that. And to me, I liked it too because I felt like so many times we adopt these stories that who knows where we got them of an either or,
mhm.
that if I'm spiritual I can't be
Yeah.
this, or if I'm X I can't be, if I spend money on this I can't do this.
Mhm.
And those are all just things that we've adopted over time.
Yeah.
So how can we let those go? I can be fabulous and
Mhm.
spiritual, and it doesn't have to live in ego, and then
Yeah.
it can be grounded, and all these things. Like, I love that it's just this sort of untangling and
Mhm.
unlearning of things that perhaps we've been fed or just adopted along the
Mhm.
way that we can let go of, and it doesn't have to be an either
Yeah.
or.
Yeah. So that's where it
Yeah.
came from.
I
It was
love
just
that.
kind of this
I love it.
it came in itself. I don't know where it came from. I don't know, just kind of dropped in one
It was
day.
just
Yeah.
channeled from the
Yeah,
divine. That's
exactly.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so that really spoke to me because that's again part of that letting go of
Mhm.
stories. And so I guess I just want to leave your listeners with that. Remember when you see that title, how can I let go of
Yeah.
stories? Let that be a positive trigger.
Mhm.
And I think they use another word for trigger. I can't remember, but it's like the positive
Mhm.
of it. And let that move you
Mhm.
to say, "Oh yeah, I don't have to be one or the other. I
Yeah.
can be everything. And I can choose it today or not choose it, and I can let things go, and I can expand
Mhm.
into whatever story it needs to be, and I can live exactly how it's true to me and whatever I'm called to
Yeah.
do."
If you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all. Yeah.
Ooh, that's
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
If you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all. That's fucking
Yeah.
deep right there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
Oh,
hope I
no,
can cuss on
please.
your
I
show.
like it.
I love that because that's been massive for me. I did a
Yeah.
podcast a couple of years ago with East Forest Krishna.
Mhm.
If you're not familiar with his work, he did a really incredible album with Ram
Oh,
Dass
wow.
before Ram Dass died, and highly recommended. And um, he was talking about
Mm.
God, and he was like, "It's God is
Yeah.
everything." And so everything means everything.
Yeah.
Because I think I said to him, even serial killers, because that's a big stretch for me. And he's like,
Yeah.
everything. And so that's some deep ass work right
Mhm.
there, right? Like,
Yeah.
everything. So what does everything mean? And so,
Mhm.
Justin the other day, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
no.
I'm trying to
No,
wrap
you're
up, but
good, you're
Justin
good.
the other day, Justin went to this church the other
Yeah.
day, and he came back and he was like, "They gave us a 38 question questionnaire. Let's read through it." And so he's reading these questions, and I couldn't even answer the questions because they were so based in these
Mhm.
beliefs of God is one way,
Yeah.
heaven, hell, Bible,
Mhm.
and I was like, I can't even answer that because I don't even believe in hell. I don't
Mhm.
believe in, like, these constructs that we've got going
Yeah.
on. And so anyway, I love that phrase. Thank you for
Yeah, you're
sharing that.
welcome.
Mhm.
It's funny because I have to come to that when I start feeling judgmental. I always come to that. If I don't see God
Mhm.
at all, like, I don't see God at all. So I'm judging right now. I'm not being aligned with, the highest as much as I can. So,
That's
yeah.
right. Oh, I
Mhm.
love it. I wanna,
Mhm.
like, paste that
Yeah,
somewhere,
paste it
so
somewhere.
it's good. Yeah, I will. I'm giving you
Oh my
credit
gosh.
too. I don't know who originally
It's
said
not
it,
my quote.
but it
Yeah,
is to
thank
me
you.
forever. So it is yours.
Thank you so much for being on
Yeah.
today, Amy. I really appreciate you. You have such a beautiful light,
Thank
beautiful energy.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me. You do too.
thank you.
So happy to connect
You
with
too.
you. When people get down on social media, again, that's one of those stories we can tell.
Mhm.
And look, it connects people in such profound
Yeah,
ways with such beautiful energies. So thank
thank
you to
you.
you. It's my honor.
Awesome. Bye. Bye.
Bye.